Did you hear that? Alright, in today's video, we're going to be looking at 7 different ways that you can take your tone to the next level using the HX Stomp. Many of you guys who are following my channel are bass players, but just know that whether or not you're playing guitar or if you're playing bass, that a lot of what we're going to cover today is going to cross over in between both categories. And if you're getting any kind of value from this channel, please hit like and subscribe. It just helps me to know whether or not I should keep going. Alright, let's hop in. Alright, so I have gone ahead here and we've opened up HX Edit. And right now I have my bass, it's going through the HX Stomp. It's actually going through my pedal board. We'll talk about that in a minute, but there's no other pedals on, just the HX Stomp. Here is the tone that we're going with. Very clean. Pretty simple. Just a clean DI. Now, in my last video, I had some people giving me some real crap about my low E string and how it was out of tune. So if you haven't hit like and subscribe yet, please do. I need some sponsors for this channel, which is going to help me afford a tuner. And so I had to go next door and borrow one because I don't have one. I'm just kidding. I have a tuner and I tuned up for you guys. You're welcome. So anyways, we're going to go in here and I'm going to go through these tips. Man, the HX Stomp is such a powerful, super cool situation. So you see here here is the HX Edit. Tip number 1 is going to be use a tilt EQ. So if you go in here, we're going to set this up. I'm going to set this right here. And we're going to go into EQ. And then there's this little guy here called tilt. What's a tilt EQ? A tilt EQ is basically one knob. When you turn it all the way up, it's going to increase your treble or your higher frequencies, and it's going to cut low frequencies. And then you do the other way, it's going to boost the low frequencies and then cut the high frequencies. It's a very simple tool, and it's really good when you use it subtly. You don't need to do big sweeping moves with it. But let's say you have a bass with brighter pickups, or you have a maple fretboard, so there's a little bit more bite. And your tone is calibrated for that. And then you switch basses to something with humbuckers, but you don't want too dramatic of a tone. This is just an example. You can bring down or up that tilt EQ like so. So here we go. I'm going to make this darker. I'm going to tilt this. I'm going to boost the low frequencies, and it's going to cut some high frequencies. So I'm boosting around the 20 mark here. So here's what it sounds like without it. And then with it. And then with fingers, this is with it off. Oops. On. So it's very subtle. You don't want to do a ton with it, but it's a nice little utilitarian thing. And then the center frequency is basically where the center of that seesaw or that tilt is going to be. I think that one right there and kind of in the center is a good middle spot, but you can play with that for your bass and wherever you think that sounds good. But I found that to be a very helpful tool. I put this right at the beginning of the chain. You may have seen tricks where maybe I put something afterwards, which we can get to a little bit later here, but because you're going to probably have an amp, you're probably going to be having effects. You don't want the tilt EQ affecting your drive. You don't want it affecting your amp. You're just wanting it affecting your bass signal. So that's why I put it first. I put it first because then the bass pickups and that signal hits that first, and it shapes my dry tone. So that way the dry tone goes through everything else. And that way my amp tone and all those other settings aren't sort of messed up. So that's tip number 1. We're going to start with that preset. And here's another little pro tip. This is in my last video as well. Name your, whoops, I don't know why I didn't finish that. I'm just going to call it YouTube. Save as you go. Because you don't want to lose your progress. You know, I've been in a situation where maybe a connection comes loose and the HX Stomp pulls out, and then I've spent some time dialing in a tone, and then it's gone. And so keep that there by saving your progress. All right, now for the other part. In my last video, I talked about why I do an amp tone and a cab tone separately. You know, you have your amp and cabs here, and you can go into this menu, and then you can select bass, for example, and like, you know, here's the Ampeg normal channel, which is great. It comes with the 810, and it comes with the normal channel. That's a little driven. I would maybe dial that in a little bit more, which is great. But you can also do dual cabs as a really great way to blend sounds together. So instead of going this route, here's what we're going to do. Just like in the last video, which, by the way, if you haven't checked out, I walk through how I built a better preset or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I walk through how to build a better preset all in one go. So go ahead and check that video out. And then I also give away the preset at the end for free. So you should definitely go check that out. I use that preset all the time and everything now. So go to your amps. You're going to go to the bass tab. Here we are. And we're going to go and start off of the Ampeg again. I like Ampeg because when I think of amp tone for bass in my head, that's what I'm getting is basically whatever. Basically. That's really, really dirty. So we're going to bring that channel volume all the way up. The channel volume is this clean volume. It's not driving the amp or anything. I'm going to bring this down. Make sure my levels are good. It's a little high. Maybe bring the drive down a little more. And for metering, I'm just metering in the Logic Pro. You kind of want to find anywhere between, you know, -6, -9 dB is a good range to be in. And if you find that you're all over the place in terms of dynamics, watch your playing dynamics for one, and then after that, maybe do some light compression. But you generally want your gain levels to be in that sweet spot. So here's that. Now, like in the last video, we're going to go and select the cab separately. But this time, we're going to hit dual. And what that's going to do is we're going to go down to the bottom. And we're going to select our cab, just like we did last time. I kind of want to stick with the 810 as the starter. And then you'll see it brings up two speakers. So you have a 10-inch speaker for one cab. And then over here, it has a 212 jazz rivet, which is a Roland jazz chorus cab. It's super clean sounding type of cab. It's going to give you a lot of punch, but we're going to change that out in a minute. So for the 810, I typically like the 421 dynamic. I think that's best. And I just like to put that at 0 degrees right there. So very classic sound. And you're also hearing that 212. So what I like to do, this is a really great way for you to be able to add more complexity to your tone. So you're going to have an 810, which is going to add a lot of low end, but it's also going to add you some punch and a little bit of clarity. What I like to do with the 810 is I like to pair it with a 215 cab. A 215 cab is going to be a lot softer and a lot more round sounding. And it's just going to have more of a lighter speaker compression. It's going to balance out what you're getting otherwise with the 810. So let's go ahead and put that in. 215, that's going to be the brute. And once again, I'm going to go in here and change that mic to 0 degrees right on. And this is just me for consistency's sake, so I know that I'm getting consistent frequencies. I like to make the mic the same as well, same distance, and that way I'm capturing a consistent and accurate representation from each speaker type. And then now these are blended together. I think that sounded pretty good. Again, you're getting a very well-rounded tone. So you're getting all that low end and that soft air from the 215, but you're getting some of that clarity and punch from the 810. I think that that's a really great way to go. So there's that. Moving on to the next part is phase checking your overdrive. I forget who it was in my last video that I did that was how to build a good preset. Somebody commented on this and I was kind of booping myself on the head thinking, why didn't I say that in the last video? But here it is in this video. What did we do in the last video? In the last video, I think we did something like the Tima, which is based off of I'm going to mispronounce the name, a Paul Cochran Timmy. I have the real Timmy on my board here and it's the best overdrive I've ever used for bass and guitar. It's so good. But we're going to put that in here. This is going to come in a little bit hot maybe. All right, that's hot. We're going to bring down the gain quite a bit here. There we go. That's a lot better. So when you run an overdrive like this into a linear path, you're going to crunch and distort things, obviously. And part of what gets distorted is not just the top end, but you're distorting the low end as well. So one thing that a lot of bass players really want to have is their low end clarity, or to have parallel routing. So this, we already did cover this part here. But if you drag down the block into its own chain, so that way this knob here goes directly into the amp and into the speaker, and you maintain that clean tone, but it's also running a parallel line as well with the overdrive. So that way you get all of that drive, but then you also get the low end as well, so you're not sacrificing that. Here's where things get really fun. This is what the comment mentioned, was checking your phase and check your polarity. It's so important to be able to check that because that also can sacrifice your low end. So here's the overdrive. We're going to go over to where those signal paths merge again. And then right down here, you have your B polarity. So I just clicked inverted. All right, and then you hit back to normal. See how all that low end just came back? If you're not listening with headphones, go listen with headphones, because that is the risk that you run when you start running parallel lines. So anyways, and then you have your A and B level. So your B level here, I can bring all that down. There's my clean signal, and then I can take that drive tone and I can blend it in and out. So now I have a blend knob for my overdrive, which is awesome. So that's the other tip right there. So I guess that was a little bonus tip right there with the blend. So use your polarity switches. The next thing that we want to look at is we want to use an effects loop. Now, before we do that, I did a poll recently on YouTube, and I asked if you guys were using the HX Stomp as part of a bigger overall rig, or if you guys were using the HX Stomp as like a standalone rig. And I think I remember it wasn't like a ton of people voting, but a lot of you guys said that you guys use the HX Stomp as a standalone rig. And if you're that person watching, I would encourage you, go get external pedals. They play so nicely with the HX Stomp and the amps. Why would you do that when you have almost infinite pedal options? Well, one, I think it's just fun. Like, learn to play analog gear. It does feel a little bit different than the digital stuff, but you also free up DSP when you use real pedals as well. But let's say you are using a pedal board. Instead of just running in to the Stomp front on, what I can do here is I can go down and we'll add send and return. I'll click stereo here, just make sure, just in case I have stereo effects, which I'm not usually using, but I'm putting it there. Boom, effects loop. And I can put that before the amp. Now let's say I have a Morning Glory or a Timmy overdrive. Instead of running that just directly in, now what I can do is I can put that Timmy or that pedal anywhere in my chain within the HX Stomp. I can put it before the EQ, I can put my overdrive after the amp, I can put it between the amp and the cab. I can put that pedal that is on my pedal board literally anywhere, which is really great. Another example as well is I have the mix knob here. What's really cool about that is on my Timmy, I don't have a blend knob. I can't blend my clean signal back in. But if I use the effects loop, I can actually mix the level of analog pedal that I want in. So right now I don't have my drive pedals in the effects loop. They actually are going into the front end of the Stomp, but I do have my delay and reverb pedals, which, by the way, I play guitar and bass. So if you haven't checked out my pedal board walkthrough, I'm going to put a card up here. Make sure you go check that out. You might learn something, might be interesting to look at. But I also run reverb. So this is a big reverb, maybe not super usable, but So there's some reverb there, but that's a lot of reverb. So maybe I want that size, but I want to blend in some clean back in. I can use my effects loop, and let's say my pedal doesn't have the blend knob. Well, now I do have one through the effects loop block. So I can bring that down, and I can mix in how much of that external pedal I'm wanting in. So you can have a little bit of a more tame trail there. So anyways, really cool feature on the HX Stomp. But if you're not using that, use the effects loop and use your external pedals, because not only is it going to offer you more flexibility, it's going to allow you actually just, more tone shaping ability that you wouldn't otherwise have if you're just running that pedal front in. All right, so that brings on the next part, is that you can actually save settings as your favorite. So like, say like with this amp right here, I've got a good tone going, maybe I want to, turn off like the sag, which the sag, I don't know what that is. Maybe I find out and I report back with a video. But let's say like this is like sort of the amp tone that I want. So like I want to boost up here. Now, let's say I want to copy that into future presets and use that as sort of my core tone. What I can do is I can go to the amp and I can right click and I can go down and save that as a favorite. And I can call this, whatever I want. So maybe we'll call it YouTube Ampeg, right? So now when I'm like searching for like future pedals in here or whatever, I can go into my favorites tab, and then I see I already have a bunch of favorites selected. But if I want to, if I wanted to pull up the YouTube Ampeg, there it is. So that's kind of a nice feature as well. And then as well, beyond that, you can also save that as the default. So so every amp has stock settings. You might remember early in the video, I pulled up the amp and was like, oh, well, that's kind of harsh. We should tame that a bit. Well, let's say you wanted the same amp settings that there were the ones that you dialed up as the default. You can set that to user default. And then every single time you pull up that amp, it keeps those same settings that you dialed in. And then you can also revert back to factory default if you want to reset it back to what it would normally be. Really nice little tip there. So if you find that you have pedal settings, amp settings, or what have you that you really like, you can do that. For example, the worship bass preset. I have that electro-harmonic synth. I keep a lot of the blocks under favorite because it took me a little bit of time to dial that in. And so instead of having to start from scratch every time I build a preset, I can just pull in the blocks the way that I need them to be pulled in, and they're ready to go. It just makes things faster. All right. This is something I kind of covered in my last video, but I kind of want to put it here again because I think it's just a great tip. Put effects after your cab, but do it strategically. Like I said with the EQ here, we put an EQ there because we wanted to shape the pickup tone heading into the amp, and then the amp outputs whatever the tone is. But if you want to get that like studio finish sound, one thing you can do at the end of the chain is you can put a compressor. A lot of people will put a pedal compressor at the beginning because they want to tame their playing and dynamics, and you should. In fact, I think sometimes if you can pull it off, multiple compressors, which in recording is called serial compression, when done correctly, can make your tone sound very consistent and polished. When you put something like the LA comp, which is like an LA2A style compressor, what you're doing, it's basically like running into an LA2A compressor at the desk when you're recording. And so it's taking the whole signal, including what's coming out of the microphone, and compressing that signal. And so that's just going to give you a little bit more of a polished tone. It's going to increase some of your dynamic range, it's going to limit some of your dynamic range. It's going to bring up the quiet parts, squeeze down the lower parts, and it's going to make your low end more consistent. If you play with a pick especially, this is a really good thing because I play really hard and sometimes I peak a little bit. And that 9 to 12 range doesn't always stay where it needs to be. And so I do watch my picking dynamics. That should be number one. But a compressor really does help take that next step in taming your dynamics so that that way they stay consistent. So that way your sound guy can actually turn you up and you're not clipping consistently because your signal's consistent. So it's a really great way to just get heard and sound more polished. And the same thing goes for here. Like go into your reverb settings, for example, and the dynamic ambience is a really good, it's not an ambient reverb. It's actually just meant to be sort of like a room. So you have your room sizes. I like a small room here, and then maybe bring the mix down maybe to like 20%. I always keep trails on. And so without it, without, just a dry pluck I find is a good way to hear a reverb like this. So you're basically now, you're taking that amp right here and you're taking this whole signal and you're putting it now into a room. That's what you're doing by putting this at the end of your chain as opposed to the beginning. And so I find that putting the reverb there is just a really nice step toward getting like a studio sound. That's actually something I do in the Nashville preset as well, is I put a reverb at the end as an optional on and off if you want to have a room. Now, if you're playing like a big room, like if you're playing in like a large church or a stadium or a theater, I probably wouldn't put something like that. You need to use it tastefully, know why you're using it. I find with smaller band arrangements that have a cohesive room sound, or you're going for a cohesive room sound, that's a really great feature. If you're playing on church on a Sunday in a larger room or in a club, I find that just turning that off and letting the room be the room is the better way to go. But if you're recording and, you know, that's just another really great option, is putting your effects after the amp to get that studio polish. All right, so we are getting pretty full here with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We got one more block left, you guys. The next one that I want to talk about is an EQ trick, is using a chorus. Now, when you're using a chorus pedal, some people use a chorus pedal for that big modulated tone that we all know and love. So we're going to go ahead and put the standard chorus. Let's see, bring up the speed. I'm going to turn the drive off as well and turn the tilt EQ off. But you don't have to use the chorus as just an effect, but you can use it as an EQ tool. So what I typically like to do is bring the speed all the way down. I like to keep a little bit of movement. And then we're going to bring the depth all the way up. No, or maybe not all the way up, but a good amount up. So I'm going to turn it off, and this is what it sounds like. And then with it on, so you just got a lot more low-end beef. And so that's a nice little trick as well. So if you want to increase your depth and your muscle and your size in the room, one way you can do that is by putting a chorus pedal in there. And let's say you have a chorus pedal, like not a block like this, but let's say you have an analog chorus pedal on your board. Run that into the effects loop. And then, you know, right when things come back in, then you can mix the signal in. Whoops, I meant that one right there. And then you mix your signal in, and then that way you can blend in more low-end size with the chorus pedal. So that's why a lot of bass players, I think, like it. It's not just for the effect, but it's also using it as more of a tone shaping tool. So you can do that. I recommend going through for your bass and seeing like which chorus pedal works the best for you, or which chorus block. You got the 70s chorus, which kind of has a similar, it's kind of based off that old Roland chorus. So we can take the rate down, and then you got the, let's see, bring the headroom up so we can let more signal flow through, but without things breaking apart. I guess this one only has the rate. Let's see, maybe we try the plastic chorus. There we go. So bring the rate down, bring this up. We'll bring the tone down. Did you hear that? So it just brought the mix up to 83%. Let's bring it down to 80 just because we're OCD like that. And we'll bring this to like, I don't know, 8.5. So without, with. So a nice little tip there. All right, everybody, so that's it. Those are the main tips that I have for you today. Did I miss anything? Are there any tips that you would have to share? Please go ahead and drop a comment down below, and we'd love to hear what you're doing inside the HX Stomp to improve your tone. And if you want to see more content like this, also let me know. Hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.